Hello, and welcome to another episode of Career Chat. I'm your host, Shannon Crooks, a librarian three at the Hillcrest Heights branch of the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. On today's show, we have Lyna Vuong. She is a chef and an interior designer. So she's going to talk to us about her careers. Thank you for joining us, Lyna. We're so happy to have you.
Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yes, so let's go ahead and get started. So, first off, what are your job responsibilities and job duties as both an interior designer and a chef?
Well, currently my role is as senior interior designer at Margaret Sullivan Studio. So it is more design focused right now, but I help lead our studio in designing and implementing our methodology and strategy to our design team and work directly with our clients to better understand their communities through community engagement so that we can create public spaces that help foster all of their um, community needs and aspirations, which can include food. So I particularly love those projects as well when I can weave in both of my passions to the
Okay.
project.
Wow. So you were telling me earlier about some of your different roles as a chef. So tell us more about that, where you worked and what it was like.
Sure. So I guess some background. So I initially, even since high school, I always knew I wanted to be a designer of some kind, and I ended up gravitating towards interior design. So I studied that in undergrad, went to art school, and worked at an architecture firm for about 7 years
Wow.
before I decided to make the pivot into food, which has always like my whole childhood and through college. I always loved cooking. I always loved food, and at that time, I just had an opportunity where I found myself really wanting to transition into that and learn more, actually, specifically about health supportive cooking. At the time, I was vegetarian. I'm not vegetarian anymore, but I was very interested in healthy eating and sustainability. So I went to culinary school part time during that architecture job I had.
Mhm.
And after graduating, I just found myself on a organic journey, I suppose, that was like one chapter after another of just exploring new pathways. So in my food journey, um, I started off from working on an organic farm, and then that was in Hawaii, and then I flew back to New York where I worked as a line cook at a Jean Georges restaurant in downtown Manhattan for like a little bit less than a year. I didn't make it that long. It was very hard work. And then from there, I was really questioning, what my ultimate goals and passions were with food and what I wanted to do with it in terms of advocating for healthier eating.
Mhm.
So that led me to work for the Department of Education in New York City, where I traveled to different schools, and I was essentially like a lunch lady. I worked with the cafeteria staff to just observe what they were cooking and serving on the daily lunch lines. But I was in a program that partnered with Grow NYC, which is the organization that runs the farmers markets throughout the city. So we were able to, through a grant, get lots of fresh seasonal produce. And so I would prepare that and cook it in the school lunches to expose the staff members to these fresh ingredients and how to cook them, but also serve samples to all the students to show them that salads can be delicious too, and also be able to provide recipes that people could bring home and share with their families and easily recreate them. So that was a really um, fun experience. And then after that, I worked as a personal chef for a few people in the city, also health oriented people that had specific health needs. And then I also worked as a caterer with a friend of mine where we also did like local seasonal cooking for a variety of events. And then that path led me to, actually, I just ended up going to grad school where I studied food studies. And that was to build on all the things that I had learned up to that point, but really tying it back into food systems and systemic issues that our food supply faces, and just thinking of food as a more holistic system and cycle and how that impacts people every day.
Mm-hmm. So how do you use your skills as a chef in interior design?
Well, that's a great question. So in the work that we do now at Margaret Sullivan Studio, we work with libraries across the country. And in doing community engagement and discovering community needs, one of the most common things I think that can connect all people is food. And a lot of things that we hear from a lot of communities is the need, either ranging from food security or the desire for food literacy, food education. And so we've been fortunate enough to talk to a lot of libraries that are interested in incorporating community kitchens in their facilities or community gardens, so they can incorporate that culinary literacy component to their spaces. So that's one way that I've been able to incorporate my background in that way.
Yeah, I think it's really unique. When I was in grad school to be a librarian, we were talking a lot about libraries having gardens and, transitioning to being spaces where people can learn stuff to apply to their everyday lives. They come for resources and books, but they also come for tips on how to improve their life. And a lot of libraries are located in food deserts. Right. So there's not a whole lot of places they can get healthy food options. So I'm so glad that you're working with Margaret Sullivan Studios on those projects.
Yeah, and food is just one of those things too that can be applied in so many ways. I mean, I think you can use food as a tool for storytelling, which is a perfect layer for libraries, whether, that's a grandparent sharing a story about their favorite recipe, where the origin of that recipe came from. Maybe it's a family tradition, and using that as a way to share family history with like their grandchildren or something. It's a great tool to do that for. And food, I like to think, always brings people together to the table, whether that's literal or metaphorical. And, people always like to talk over food. It's an easy way to gather people together. So whether that's through storytelling or using it as a teaching tool to teach how to measure ingredients, you can incorporate math and science in that way. I think the opportunities are endless.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of STEM programs right now with cooking. So I think it's really fun for customers to be able to engage with that, because we don't have kitchens in our libraries. But because we're in a virtual space now, we can use our own kitchens at home and film it and talk about how to cook certain things and ingredients. And like you said, using science with measuring and math to be able to help kids learn is so unique. And it's an easy way to, work with children, even though we're in a virtual space. So yeah, I'm loving that. So the next question is, you told us a little bit about your educational path, but what other educational opportunities did you have after high school to get to where you are now?
Well, I guess I would say that maybe to build on that tangentially, I think I was always just looking for opportunities to learn, whether that was like in high school, I took like Saturday morning classes at my local art college that was in Philadelphia, but that was interior design focused. And then, yeah, I guess whenever any opportunity presented itself to me, I tried to take it up when possible. So when I had mentioned working on an organic farm, that was actually a volunteer opportunity that I took. It was through the worldwide organic farming opportunities program, like the Wolf program. And
Okay.
so that was, that I would say that was an educational opportunity anyway through volunteering, where I could go work on a farm for 5 months and get hands-on experience to, learn how, it was a permaculture farm. So I learned what permaculture farming was, what that entailed, how much work is involved in harvesting food. It definitely gave me like real life experience and appreciation for, when I go to the grocery store and I see a bag of lettuce or, carrots or something, I have a better understanding of how much work was entailed in growing those things and harvesting those produce. And yeah, I would say most of my educational opportunities were like through volunteering experiences before I decided to go back to grad school.
So teens, if you're listening, teens, volunteer opportunities are key. Not only just to get your, hours that you have to get for volunteer, for school, but it also gives you a chance to be exposed to different careers that you may want to look, into going into in the future. And also summer, jobs are really good opportunities. Take advantage of this time now where you're not really like in college focused on, a career or studies, to really explore what's out there, see what, you can do in your community. Start by asking your guidance counselor at school or talking to your teachers to see if they have opportunities. I talked to an attorney not too long ago, and she said that the schools have the volunteer opportunities, but the students aren't necessarily going to seek those opportunities. So sometimes they just fall by the wayside. So I encourage young people to go speak to your guidance counselor and others at your school to see what's out there to support you in your career journey. It's never too early to start.
Absolutely. And even if you don't see something maybe that your guidance counselor might have materials for, look up organizations that you admire or really like the work that they do, and just reach out to them. I think people are always happy to have volunteers. Like another volunteer opportunity I took on was through a program called Spoons Across America, and they had us go to different elementary schools across New York City where they gave us a curriculum to teach to the kids. And that was a lot of fun in terms of just even learning for myself to, one, learn how to teach, but two, also, it was a much more structured way to learn more about specific food issues and how to describe them in a more simple way for people of different ages to understand. So yeah, always explore. And I think it's always great to just, do research and see what other community organizations are doing. Don't feel limited by necessarily what maybe your guidance counselor might have to offer, but there's a lot of opportunities out there.
Yeah, there are. And some people come to the library and offer us like flyers to give out to people. So, we're not open right now, but once we are open, please, stop by the library and see if someone has given us some opportunities to share with the community. It's so important to volunteer. I wish I had known when I was in high school how important it was. I did some volunteer work, but not as much as I probably could have done. Just to expose me to different career opportunities. It would have really helped shape my journey, and helped me figure out what I wanted to do. Because in high school, it's kind of hard to say, hey, when I go to college, I want to be this. Or, as you grow up, if you're not exposed to different things, it can be a challenge to decide. So
absolutely.
Yeah, volunteer work is so important. Next question is, how did you get interested in your profession? Like, what sparked your interest to go into these professions?
Honestly, I guess it was just me leaning into what my inherent curiosities and interests and passions were. So I would say throughout my whole life, I've always been like the art student. I always love art class and making things with my hands. And by the time I was in high school and at the point where I needed to decide what I wanted to study in school, I think I had narrowed it down to interior design, fashion design, or graphic design, to my parents' dismay, because they didn't really want me to go to art school. But I was very determined. I knew I wanted to be in New York City. And I had an uncle who had studied architecture. So I guess what draws me to both food and design is just, I feel like it has like an inherent quality that gathers people in some way. Mm-hmm. So with interior design, I ended up picking that because, we all experience spaces every day, and you can immediately feel some type of reaction when you walk into a space, whether it makes you feel welcoming or not. If you feel cozy and you want to stay there, or just have the opposite reactions. I really like that element of thinking about spaces in that way. And similar with food, like how I had mentioned before, that it's such a tool for gathering people. So I think that's what just drew me to both of those fields. I'm sorry, what was the original question?
What sparked your interest to go into these professions?
What sparked my interest? Okay, so with design, I would say it was just an inherent passion and curiosity in it. But with food, I would say that in that time of my life, I was just getting especially curious in sustainability, just because in the work we were doing actually with architecture and design, and thinking about the materials that we use, and just learning more about the impact that we had in our choices and the environment. I guess I was getting very interested in sustainability at that time, which also got me thinking about food and how food impacts the environment, how food impacts our health. And I think that was the first spark that got me going down that path, in terms of just constantly asking more questions and wanting to learn more about it. And also because I just love food, and that's what led me to go down that path.
Oh, okay. Yeah, some young people, like you were saying, have an interest in something, but their parents may not, want them to go into that career. And it takes courage, to go after what you want to do, because essentially you're going to be the one doing that type of work the majority of your hours in a day. So it's important for young people to, if you want to do something, really try to go after it and pursue it. But also, as a young person, seek opportunities to get more information about those careers, because sometimes what you think it may be may not be what it actually is when you get into the workforce. So it's so important to do your research if you're interested in a particular career.
Yeah, and I can actually really resonate, or that idea really resonates with me, because my parents are immigrants, and it was always, I guess, a very big deal for them, for me growing up, that I go to college, and that's why they came to this country, for me to have a better education. And I think it was I can empathize for sure with other people that may be experiencing similar dynamics in their families in that way, of the struggle of pursuing like an artistic field, where there may be expectations of studying something else that's more traditional. So there's definitely the navigation of, doing your research and talking to your parents in a way that, helps them trust you and your decisions that you're making, that you're ultimately making the right choice. I totally get that.
Yeah, and I agree, talking with your parents. And if they kind of see that you've been doing some things and, talking with people, doing some volunteer work, and you're able to really talk about the career and what it means to be in that career, that can, help them understand how to support you. I know when I was thinking about going back to school for a third time, after I had been in a career for over 10 or 15 years, my parents were like, "What? You want to do what?" You want
Yeah.
to go back to school again and put yourself through that stress that I saw you go through? And I was like, yeah, because X, Y, and Z. I really feel passionate about this profession. This is what I could do with a degree. Of course, I'm an adult and I can make my own decisions, but still, they, were worried about the stress that grad school entails. And they saw the struggle I went through the first time I went to grad school. So they were a little hesitant. But after I explained to them, I did my research, I've talked to people, I think this is what I really want to do, they were more supportive than if I would have just said, hey, I want to drop this and do this, without any knowledge of what it would be like to be in that career. So yeah, doing your research is important. And sometimes when you do your research, you might discover, hey, this might not be for me. Let me look at something else.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the next question is, what obstacles did you face in the pursuit of your profession?
I would say just rolling, for me, it was rolling with the uncertainties, because I guess maybe it's the Gemini in me, but I definitely, I did certainly do my research, but I have to admit that I didn't go into my career path with a very linear game plan. I feel like my career path is definitely very organic and kind of goes all over the map, and just happens to work out for me in terms of webbing together all my skills and talents and passions. So I would say that, I mean, it may sound too easy, but I think what I ultimately go back on is, really following what you're genuinely interested in and passionate about. And although it may not seem like it's going in a linear path, I think when you do follow things that you're genuinely interested in and are connected with folks that are interested in those things as well, it helps you form the career path that leads you to what you want to do, I think.
Yeah, that's so true. If, sometimes we're in a career, or some people stay in a career because I'm making the money I want to make, or I'm making good money, but I'm really not happy with, going to work every day. But the stability of having that particular position with that particular amount of money they're making kind of makes them stay. But deep down inside, they want to do something else, or they want to pursue something else. And that's what was happening with me. I was in my career, I was making a decent living, I was,
What was your career before?
I was a social worker.
Okay.
But the stress of the job was really weighing down on me. I loved working with people. I loved, helping people reach their goals. But I didn't like bringing work home every day, having a cell phone chained to me, if an emergency happened, or having to do case notes or reports at home all the time. I never, made time for myself. And so that's what made it difficult for me to continue in that career. But being in a library, I still use the social work skills. I still work with people, from different backgrounds. I still help people achieve their goals. But when I go home, I can really be at home to decompress and to let go of work. And then when I come back to work, I'm recharged, energized, ready to go. Whereas with being a social worker, I wasn't able to do that. But some people
Yes, it's so important.
Yeah.
Self-care and wellness is so important for you to be able to do your job to help other people, for sure.
Yes, very important. And then when you were talking about the food, I was like, yeah, I couldn't make healthy choices back then, because some work weeks would be 60-hour work weeks, and I had to just eat on the go all the time, and I wasn't able to get healthy food sometimes. And so, yeah, it's important to have a good work-life balance, with your personal life and with work, and also with your health. It's so important to be able to eat healthy, to exercise, to drink water, and some jobs that people have, they're on the go and they're not able to do those things for themselves. And that's really not healthy. So yeah, I just decided one day, hey, enough is enough. Let me see what other careers are out there where I can transfer the skills I had as a social worker over to something else. So I looked into librarianship, and I love it. I really do.
Well, and also to build on what you're saying, it's, just because a person might choose to shift their career in some way, it doesn't necessarily mean dropping everything that you learned before. I think it's leveraging what you've already learned, the experiences that you've had, the skills that you have, and seeing how you can apply that to the next path of your career journey. There's always ways to leverage that.
Mm-hmm. So many people come into the library and they're looking for a job or they're looking for a career. And I ask them, what is your dream job? And they say to me, I can't do my dream job. I've never worked in that before. And I was like, well, there are some skills that you probably already have that you don't know how to apply to another career. So tell me your dream job. And then they tell me, then I say, okay, so what's your current job, or what jobs have you done in the past? And then we start to work through those. And I say, okay, let's list some of your skills and your job duties. And then let's look up the skills and the job duties for your dream job and see how we can transfer those skills over to that particular career, so that when you go for an interview, your resume aligns with what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. So many people think that they can't go over to another career because of the careers they've had before and that they're not related. But a lot of times, more times than not, skills that you already have can be applied, like what you were saying with, being a chef for so long, you were able to take those skills and transfer them over to being an interior designer because you understood what an interior designer does, so that you can incorporate some of those skills over into that position. And that's so important for people to understand, especially now in a pandemic, where so many people have lost their job and maybe they can't do what they were doing before because of, the restrictions we have on us as a society with the pandemic. But there's skills that they have that they can use somewhere else. They just don't know how to transfer those skills.
100%. And also, I think from an employer's perspective, that it could be viewed as an asset that, you're coming with such a wider background, wider experiences that you can contribute to your next role. I think that's even more of an asset than having a narrow background, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so true. Hopefully our viewers are listening and taking that information in. It's so important. Next question is, can you compare and contrast some of the different jobs you've had in your profession?
Sure. So, well, in the architecture and design world, I really just have had experiences at two firms, and that was my first job out of school, which was a medium-sized firm. I would say it was a range at one point from 20 people up to 50 people at one point. And so that was definitely an experience in terms of being in a larger structured organization. And then now at Margaret Sullivan Studio, it's a much smaller team. We have about 5 or 6 designers as a part of our group. And there's definitely a difference in terms of also where we are today in the world, and also just working with a small business. You definitely have more of an entrepreneurial spirit. And when you work at a smaller firm, there's also just a lot more opportunities in terms of taking on a variety of different roles instead of just the one job title that you have. For me, my role could one day be lead designer, another day it will be project manager, another day it could be helping with social media and marketing, another day it could be dealing with business development. So you definitely wear a lot more hats in that way. And then in my cooking background, every position was so different. From being a line cook at a restaurant, it definitely felt like, what you may imagine in like maybe a TV show or a movie or something, of it being very hard work. It's like the complete opposite of a desk job. I went from having a desk job to standing on my feet for 12 hours a day. Wow. And sweating immensely and being under very harsh working conditions. And you know, it was definitely like the complete opposite contrast to that. To working in schools, which is, you know, also a great experience in terms of just learning more about how public institutions run and the challenges that they face in terms of dealing with even just like the budgets that people have to, you know, for school lunches and how they're able to feed thousands of students every day was just so impressive and fascinating to learn more about. So they're all so different, but all great experiences to have.
Wow, very interesting career journey. I wish I had one as interesting as yours. Very cool. Next question is, what advice do you have for someone who wants to get into the career that you're into?
I would build on a lot of what we've spoken about already. I've actually have spoken to a lot of teens and college students about this subject because they're also just curious and in the process of figuring out their career paths. And to what we already said, you know, always explore opportunities that present themselves to you, whether that's through volunteering. Look around you and see what organizations are doing that you enjoy or admire the work that they're doing. I'd also recommend seeking mentors, whether they could be peer mentors or, you know, someone older than you, but I think it's always nice to have outside perspective beyond someone that might be your parent or a teacher, but someone maybe that is in that profession. I think people are always willing to share their experiences and insights with people. And I know that can be maybe a little intimidating at times to approach people, but I think people generally like helping people. I like to think that. So reaching out to people to be a mentor or even doing informational interviews and just asking if someone has an hour of time to carve out to talk to you about their life experiences, what led them, you know, similar to the career chats that you're doing, you know, what led people to choose the careers that they did and how you to better learn how you can apply your passions and interests into something tangible.
Yeah, seeking out people and asking questions is a huge thing that people can do to learn more about careers that I don't think people take advantage of. Yeah, you can go on the computer and Google all types of positions and all types of organizations, but actually hearing firsthand what someone's experience is like in that position is so different from doing those searches because they can tell you, you know, the ins and outs. They can tell you what's difficult or challenging about a position. They can tell you what's rewarding or what they, you know, wish they would have known before getting into that career. It's so important to talk to people before you get into something because a lot of times what you learn in school, even going to college, is not what the career is actually like or what it's like to be in the profession. I wish I had done more of that, you know, in high school. But yeah, it is hard. You feel like this person's not going to want to talk to me or you know, spend an hour with me, but they actually do. From, you know, people I've talked to who even had interns, they've said, you know, this was so enlightening for me. I forgot what it was like to be a student wanting to get into the career. They're teaching me things that I didn't know about myself. I'm also teaching them things that I didn't recognize before about the profession that they need to know. So they would love to do it, you know, to speak to people or work with people who want to get into their careers.
One more thing I want to add about that is, and maybe this applies more the older you get in terms of your college career and networking events and things like that. But I just think it's also important to just share your story. You know, don't hold your passion and interest to yourself. I think that might be something some people feel uncomfortable doing, but even if you're uncertain about where it's going to take you, I would encourage people to share your story, share what your interests are, and it's just one way of expanding your community or network in that way, because maybe, you know, Shannon, maybe I met you at a barbecue or something, and maybe you tell me that, oh, I'm actually thinking about exploring, going into, X, Y, or Z. And then, maybe a week later, I meet someone who's doing what you're saying. And I'm like, oh, I want to connect that person with Shannon. So if you keep it to yourself, people won't know that that's something you're interested in. But the more people you share your story with, the more that people know how to help you or know how to connect you with the people that would be the perfect fit for you.
Yeah, that's so true. I was talking to someone the other day, and we were talking about her son going to college, and she was like, oh, I don't know how to push him to try to figure out what he wants to do. He tells me one thing and then he wants to do something else. And, I've never been to college myself. That's what she's telling me. And I'm saying to her, well, I've been, so let me tell you a little bit about what it's like. And if you want me to talk to him, I will. And, just by her sharing that with me helped her, understand what college is like, because she's never been. Her kids have never been. So she didn't know how to communicate with her kids, what it would be like. And, she's feeling stressed about, their next steps, because next year is senior year for her son.
Right.
So she's a little afraid and nervous about how to navigate the whole, college experience. So yeah, just talking with people, letting people know that you have had these experiences, or someone who has these experiences, is very helpful. Yeah, more people would do that, we would be a lot further along with trying to figure out what we want to do. But some people just don't talk about those things, but it's very helpful.
Yeah.
How has your profession changed since COVID has happened?
I would say that as working at a design firm, we've been fortunate that we have been able to be nimble and just shift to working online and going into Zoom land. And, we've been fortunate to be able to maintain our client relationships in that way, to develop our projects. I guess the main shift would be in the work that we're doing in terms of, previously being able to do in-person community engagement work that was typically done in community meetings or town halls and things like that. And now we've shifted to communication through smaller, more intimate virtual settings, which actually has worked out in some ways. For example, we were designing some teen spaces in California, as well as working with a teen group in the South Bronx. And we actually found that the virtual setting was more preferable or ideal in talking to teens and getting their feedback, since that's a platform that I feel like more teens are just inherently comfortable with. But the downside, I would say, would be more like internal dynamics in terms of the way I work with coworkers. It's hard when pre-pandemic, we're used to meeting at our studio table and just having quick collaborative conversations, or for me to be able to draw something and for someone to see it real quick, or for me to pin it up on the wall. Whereas now it's like, okay, let me draw it, take a picture and send it to you, and then we can talk about it later, type of thing. Yeah, I guess for the most part, we've been fortunate that we haven't been severely impacted by that. We've been able to continue doing the work that we advocate for, just in a different way.
Yeah, transitioning to the virtual world, has its pros and cons. A lot of people, I think, miss that close contact of their coworkers. I know I do. We go in, every other week, but it's a smaller group than what we had before. So it's allowed me to learn, how, certain people are, because I'm a little closer with them now because not everybody is in the building. So that's been a pro, but Yeah, I miss everybody coming together. We used to do, little gatherings, like little breakfasts or lunches together and, really talk with each other. We don't have that anymore. But it is different. It's an adjustment. But yeah, it's definitely different. I think a lot of people think we're going to get out of it like, next month, like when are we going to get out of it? And we're like still in it. So
Right, right.
that's
And
the hard
it's also challenging for us because we had a lot of interns this summer. Well, actually,
part.
since the beginning of the pandemic, we had interns, and that was a
Mhm.
first for us because you're dealing with high school or college students, and I think it's challenging when you want to be very present for them and give guidance, and being virtual just adds a whole other layer on top of it, and also just for team camaraderie, it's a little strange to think about. Like we always have a joke in the office. It's like, I don't even know how tall you are in real life. I've never met you in real life. I don't know. So that's kind of a weird dynamic that maybe is a part of our future. We'll
Mhm.
see.
And then teens and, young adults, they want hands-on experience. They want to, have the experience of, hey, I'm actually going to work today and I'm going inside the building and I get to see how people interact with each other. So,
Right.
it's not, it's, good to be virtual, but it's not the same type of experience. So I hope they get some chances to come in one day when
Yeah,
things are safer. Yeah. I know I liked that when I was an intern. I was just like, oh, I'm really actually going to work. You get dressed and you go in, and it's just different, virtually versus in person.
for sure.
Hmm. So the next question is, what are some resources or recommendations you have for people who want to pursue your career?
I guess I would say similar answer to what we were talking about before in terms of um, I guess just like doing research of organizations that are doing things that you admire. So that could be nonprofit organizations or companies that are making things or making products that align with what your interests are. And then in
Hmm.
terms of like schools, I think it's just so important to in deciding what school you want to go to like if possible. I know it's different during pandemic now, but visit the schools, talk to professors or current students at that school if you can. Usually, most schools have that option where you can talk to current students or alumni of the school to get as much insight as you can about the program. You can even ask to sit in on certain courses just to get a feel of like what it's like, what a classroom setting is like at that school.
Hmm.
Because every school is so different in terms of their facilities and their resources. And um, I think it's really important to do all of that research before you make a commitment to something.
Hmm.
Similarly with an internship, you can do similar things in that way before you can ask to participate or sit in for one day and just
Hmm.
see what a typical day in the life is like, and that will help inform you of, do you like the culture there, do you like the environment, not just your day-to-day tasks. I think all of those environmental components make a really big impact on what your experience will be.
Hmm. Yeah, understanding the culture is so important. Sometimes you can go into a workplace and everybody is so busy, they don't have the time to dedicate to you as a student, as an intern to get what you need. So it's very important that you understand, the culture, what they have to do on a day-to-day basis. Do they have enough staff to do what they do? Maybe they don't have enough staff, so they have to dedicate themselves to different things at work and they just don't have the time to dedicate to an intern. What I like to do is when an intern is introduced to me by my supervisor, I say to her, okay, how long is the intern going to be here? What's their time like going to be? with coming in, so that I can make sure that I'm able to provide them with different experiences that will be enriching for them, because ultimately they're there to get something out of it. They're not just there to, be an extra helping hand. They're there to learn something to help them, with their career journey. So that's what I like to do. But some places they just be like, okay, whatever, just bring them in, and they don't even really dedicate the time that that person needs to learn from being there to have a good experience.
Yeah, and also think about, for students that are watching this, think about what you want out of the experience and what your ideal scenario would be, because certain things work better for you than others. Like I remember when I was first going through job interviews after college, undergrad, to pick which job I wanted to go with, the two different firms had such completely different work environments, which was so, like, office culture was so important to me. And so one office I remember stepping into, and it was just like very stark, and it was like completely silent. No one was talking. There's no music. And even the person that was guiding me through the space was like, oh, this is our 24-hour studio space, essentially implying that people worked like 24 hours a day or could work there 24 hours a day. And then meanwhile, the other firm that I went to interview at, it just had a much more warm and welcoming environment. They had music playing. They talked about like extracurricular things that the office did. Like they had an office softball team, and they were just asking me about my interests. And, you can immediately get a feel of like office culture in that way. So yeah, I mean, some people might prefer to work in a place that's very quiet. So, think about what your own interests are and what would your ideal scenario be. And if it's for school, think about what type of learning environment you would do best in. And I think that will help guide you in your decision making.
Yeah, because sometimes an internship can turn into a position. Like if you're in school and you intern there and then a position opens up and then you're like, hey, this is really where I want to be. So taking advantage of your internship as an opportunity to say, hey, is this somewhere that I may want to work in the future? This could be my start, or the door could be open for me now just to see what it's like. So I did try to look at internships like that too. Is that this could be a future place that I want to work. And you're right. The culture is so important. You have to spend 8 or more hours, in this place, of business. You want to make sure you're comfortable there. You want to make sure you like the people you work with. You want to make sure you're having fun. So really, understanding what it's like to be there is so important. So important. Even just interviewing outside of internships, when you go on an interview, just thinking about, hey, when I walk in the building, just observe, what people are doing and saying, like you said, to understand what it's like to be there, because ultimately you're going to, be working with these people or working in this environment. So you need to feel comfortable. So important. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of our interview. Do you have any last comments that you would like to provide the viewers about your profession?
Well, I would say with both of my professional backgrounds, I mean, I guess I would just advocate for, again, like not only thinking about what a profession can offer you, but also from your own perspective, what you can offer that profession. And in terms of following your dreams and aspirations, I look at it through a very community focused lens. I really like to think about ways that I can make an impact in someone else's life or a community's life, and creating positive change in that way. So I think it can feel like a lot when you're trying to decide what you want to do, but I would say, seize the opportunities that present themselves to you, and always go in with an open mind, and, open willingness to do new things and try new things and be collaborative and reach out to other folks. And I think, I know it sounds easier said than done, but I think that it's a great way to just expand your network and community in that way to help you to get where you want to go.
Yes, great advice. Seize the opportunity. Awesome. So the last question is for me. And it is, what are some resources the library offers people who are new to the job market, maybe changing careers, or looking for new work due to the COVID-19 emergency? Well, you can visit us at pgcmls.info 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can visit our online library and go to the jobs and careers section. You can see BrainFuse and the Learning Express library there, where you can do career assessments, you can search for jobs, you can create a resume and get expert feedback and receive interview tips from a live job coach on Job Now. You can also look at different resources that are designed to help veterans navigate the Department of Veterans Affairs. You can prepare for college if you're a high school student, or brush up on any job skills if you're looking to transition to a new position or a new career. There's also step-by-step guidance to discovering your interests, choosing a career, preparing a resume, finding schools, colleges, or programs, and searching for job openings. Also, if you are looking to do practice tests for college entrance exams, you can work on those there, and also employment and citizenship tests and tutorials. So there's so much to offer. Just visit us online at pgcmls.info. You can use your library card number to access the online resources. If you are a PG County resident and a student, you can use your student ID number to access the resources, and the last 4 digits of your student ID number is your PIN number. Again, Lyna, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much,
Shannon. Yes, I loved everything you said. Hopefully our viewers got something out of it too. And viewers, tune in again next Wednesday at 3 p.m. as we explore a new and exciting career on Career Chat. Again, I'm your host, Shannon Crooks from the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. Thank you for joining us today, and tune in again next week. Bye, and have a great afternoon.
Bye, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Lyna.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.